Hi, my name's Duckworth, and I'm really excited to read my first chapter of my new book titled Dear Coco, the coffee truck that changed my life. Now we're going to do this as one continuous, unedited take, so it gets a little emotional in parts, so thanks for sticking with me. Here we go. Chapter 1 is titled Decision 1, Standing on the Beach. From an early age, I had my feet in the sand and bare chest on a surfboard. I had an idyllic Australian beachside childhood of supportive parents, loving older brothers, and an amazing education. I had friends, freedom, and role models. Every day after school, Mum would drive a car full of kids to the beach and watch us surf until dark, turning the headlights on when it was time to come in. We'd often pretend we didn't see the lights if the waves were firing that day. Mum worked all day at the local college, and I'm sure sitting in the car after dark was the last thing she felt like doing, but she did it every day with a loving smile on her face. Once darkness fell, we'd drive home sitting on beach towels, shower in our wetsuits, eat dinner, and do our homework. We did this on repeat every day, and I adored it. I was the olive-skinned, slender-built, athletic young man that lived in the ocean. So much so, my dark hair had permanent blonde tips from years and years of sun and salt water. I was constantly surrounded by happy families and lots of mates. We ran free and wild up and down Sydney's northern beaches while travelling to as many surfing contests as possible to keep the cabinet stacked with trophies. I became one of the best young surfers in Australia on competition merit and the captain of the Warringah Rats rugby team. I had my first kiss at the age of 15 and was never teased by my friends about not smoking the marijuana joints being passed around the circle on the beach every weekend. I couldn't have wished or hoped for a more privileged, albeit simple, upbringing. I had everything I needed. I longed for nothing, and to this day I feel incredibly lucky I was given this life. I was every bit the average Aussie kid who had to endure next to no hardships thanks to the hard work, love and protection provided by my beautiful parents, Marilyn and Paul, and the deep friendship with my two older brothers, Chris and Simon, who I've looked up to my entire life. My dad played a particularly formative role, showing me what a hard-working, stoic, honourable man could be. He set an example I wanted to live up to, not only there and then in my early years, but by setting a roadmap for the man I wanted to become. In 1995, I graduated high school and went to university to study business management, second only to arts as the most generic, non-committal university degree available. Back then, business or arts degrees were for people that didn't know what they wanted to do after school, people like me. While studying full-time, I worked at the Newport Arms Hotel as their second ever male bartender, given their hiring focus was attractive females. The first was Tony, a specimen of a man seemingly carved out of granite that the ladies adored. I was also store attendant at the local Liquorland, stocking shelves and selling bottles of alcohol and cigarettes. Fast forward to 2015, and I was standing on Freshwater Beach on Sydney's northern beaches, now a 37-year-old doting family man. It was a sparkling summer morning, and our two daughters were running in and out of the ocean, laughing and splashing around like a beach party scene out of Home and Away. To my right was my beloved wife. Emma is my dream girl. She's my oxygen, and I adore her like no other. To my left were my daughters, Malia, 7, and Lani, 6, in their sun-smart rash vests, dragging around my moray bodyboard by its leash. It was 28 degrees Celsius with a light offshore breeze and knee-high waves. The kids were alive with joy, and Emma and I had never been happier. This setting was many people's idea of utopia. I was living our own version of paradise. The 4-bedroom house we co-owned with the bank was a mere 5 minutes away. It's the family home I grew up in that Emma and I bought off my parents to fund their retirement and realise our own Sydney property ambitions, which for many people is an impossible real estate feat. We had friends and family littered all over Sydney's northern beaches. Emma and I have a blissful, happy marriage and our family had no issues we couldn't overcome. I was living my corporate dream as marketing director of a blue chip organisation. We owned surfboards, 2 adorable cats, a car and a Harley Davidson. I had 0 health issues and a full head of hair. Life was beyond sweet, and I was deeply grateful for what we'd built. But amongst my deep-seated gratitude for this glorious life we'd created, somehow I still felt a niggle. I had an itch I needed to scratch. It's a strange, counterintuitive feeling, not being entirely content with the utterly beautiful life that Emma and I had created. But here was the issue. Standing on the beach that day, gazing out onto the horizon, I could picture the next 20 years of my life playing out vividly. It was a vision full of happiness, gratitude, and it brought a wry smile to my face. How did such a humble guy who graduated high school and university, but is the very definition of average, so damn lucky? So why change anything? I had everything I wanted and more. Why, standing on Freshwater Beach that day, did I suddenly feel the burning urge to completely upturn our lives? Some folks have to go away on expensive holidays to experience the lifestyle we'd created for ourselves. So why did I have this underlying feeling of dissatisfaction? Amongst some completely rational thinking, here's what I kept telling myself. I'm uneasy about being able to picture the next 20 years playing out so clearly. Although it's a beautiful life, and I'm deeply thankful for it, I reckon we've got more adventure in us than this. Before having children, I travelled the world extensively. I visited over 30 countries, I lived in a camper van with mates, and shared houses with strangers all around the world. I'd loved and lost, worked hard, played hard, and everything in between. Landlocking myself for the foreseeable future didn't sit well in my heart. Not at 37 years old anyway. So, in that moment, without reservation or consequence, I turned to Emma and uttered the soon-to-be fateful words, "How would you feel about moving the family to London?" Confused about where the question came from, Emma naturally asked why. I told her about my thirst for more adventure, about giving our girls a European upbringing, about returning her to her Northern Hemisphere motherland after 13 years living in Australia. Emma is half British, half French, and now an Australian citizen. And how, by being in the centre of the highly revered European dessert-making scene, she could not only continue, but scale her fledgling baking business. I painted a beautiful picture of spontaneous long weekends in Paris, being anywhere we wanted within a 2-hour flight from Heathrow, and the girls learning to speak French, just like their grandmother. The sales pitch was coming out like butter, and it sounded like sheer bliss. Before I could contemplate the size of the can of worms I'd just opened, the dream was sold to the blonde in the flowery bikini. Without hesitation, Emma excitedly answered yes, and hugged me just like we'd got engaged. Shit. In my spontaneous, overly decisive, early midlife crisis moment, I hadn't thought about what to do if she actually said yes. But it appeared we were now relocating a currently financially secure family that was currently on its professional ascendancy to a foreign country without any regard for what might or might not happen. I was now on the hook for something very big and very scary. Little did I know, I had just set in motion a series of events that would challenge the family and our relationship with each other like never before. These events would leave scars that would never completely heal and cause financial devastation I never knew possible. I couldn't possibly have known there was something lurking beneath the surface that day on Freshwater Beach, waiting to pounce on the beautiful adventure we just committed to. But for now, we were moving to London. As we busied ourselves getting our Sydney affairs in order, rehoming our 2 beloved cats and preparing the family home for tenants, we received some bombshell news. Emma was pregnant with our 3rd child, and the age gap to the baby's older sisters would be 7 and 8 years. It completely knocked the wind and momentum out of me. In front of Emma, I acted delighted with the news, but behind closed doors, I was a crumbling, insecure mess. This pregnancy news wasn't in the script, and it took a lot of processing. Just as we'd laid the foundation for our next chapter overseas, we now had to pump the brakes and rethink everything. I felt shame in feeling like our yet-to-be-born baby had somehow done us, me, a disservice. I found myself asking some hard questions. Isn't our family already complete? Do I have any more love to give to another child? Do I want to go back to being a single income family after financially struggling for 8 years? Do I even want another child? My mind couldn't stop racing with insecure, upsetting thoughts. These thoughts might not entirely be uncommon for those who have faced similar situations, but for me, these feelings were incredibly confronting. These were extremely challenging questions to be asking yourself amongst the ultimate joy of falling pregnant. Many people don't even get to experience this joy, and here I was lucky enough to be offered it for a third time. The guilt of even pausing for thought hit me hard, and it wasn't a nice feeling. I felt like a ticking time bomb ready to explode. The war being waged in my mind eventually erupted to the point where I couldn't take the torment any longer. I needed to talk to Emma. She always made me feel better. One night, after Malia and Lani went to bed, I physically broke down. I admitted to Emma that I couldn't face going through the process of being a new dad again. I cried inconsolable tears, telling her the pressure I felt financially, dragging this family through the last 8 years, only to be returning to that feeling for another untold number of years. I told her I was suffocating under this new, resurfaced pressure and that I couldn't breathe. I told her I couldn't be a third-time father. Through my own admission, I'd created an impossible situation for Emma. I knew she was excited for our third baby, but I shamefully dominated the moment with my own selfish agenda. I was unhinged with my own vulnerability and showed no regard for how Emma was feeling about the pregnancy. Taking advantage of her supremely giving nature, I convinced her to consider our options. The option we landed on was to visit a family planning clinic in Chatswood, Sydney. I say we, but I actually mean me, and I hated myself for it. The feeling I carried walking into the clinic that day, knowing it was against Emma's wishes, will haunt me until the day I die. It still causes me insurmountable, unspoken pain all these years later. I've buried this shame so deep inside, I didn't think it would ever appear out in the open. I've never spoken about it privately or publicly. After sitting in the clinic, answering the doctor's pre-qualifying questions, we commenced the intrusive and heartbreaking procedure. As Emma lay there in tears, I'd never felt so small. I wanted to protect this woman from anything that could make her upset, but in this moment, I was the one causing all her pain. As the doctor commenced the procedure, she stopped and informed us we weren't ready to abandon the pregnancy just yet. The pregnancy was too early in term and the fetus wasn't developed enough yet. This meant the procedure wouldn't be happening that day, and we'd have to rebook the appointment and return in a few days. we'd be living with this crushing guilt longer than we expected. We left the clinic and went to get something light to eat. It had been an unbelievably draining day. Sitting in the food court of the nearby shopping centre, we couldn't even look at each other, and it was all my fault. I felt an intense amount of shame for putting Emma through such a devastating experience. I didn't sleep a wink that night, and I turned away from Emma in shame as I tried to silence the demons corroding my mind. When I woke up the next day, everything had changed. I sat Emma down on the sofa and poured my heart out to the point of not being able to talk anymore. I told her there was no way I would ever put her in that position ever again. I felt a level of shame I'd never felt before, talking her into something she didn't want but was willing to do to care for her husband's emotional health. I asked Emma to please forgive me, which she did unconditionally, and I told her I wanted to keep our baby. An instant love for our unborn child was formed that morning and has never faltered since. This conflicting time brought Emma and me closer, but also challenged our togetherness. Ultimately, we made the right decision for us. Welcoming our new baby into our family would make us complete. My selfish agenda and resulting decisions I forced upon Emma, and the deeply confronting process that followed, left scars that we healed together. But my own scars of shame and guilt will never truly heal. As we prepared to welcome Coco into the family, I made the emotional, difficult decision to cancel our impending move to London. Relocating a young family to the other side of the world with a pregnant wife and no support system felt irresponsible, so we deferred the move indefinitely. Emma was shattered. She had already emotionally left for London, and we had rehomed our beloved cats at great distress. Taking this life adventure away at the 11th hour broke me. I'd let the reality of being a father for the third time stifle my adventurous, decisive spirit. I despised myself for it, on top of the always-on guilt I was feeling from our pregnancy journey to date. I was not in a good spot at this point in my life. I was not my father's son, and I'd never hated what I saw looking back in the mirror until now. In May 2016, Coco was born. She was absolutely perfect, and today we can't imagine life without her. I set about being the most incredible third-time dad humanly possible. I took parental leave from my corporate job and immersed myself in falling deeply in love with Coco. I wanted us to become inseparable best friends, and we formed an instant connection. I adored this child. I stroked her face when she slept and cried the harshest of tears, knowing I nearly wasn't the dad she deserved. I almost let her go. I almost didn't fight for her. From her first day to my last, this little girl and her sisters will now be at the center of every decision I make. I wanted to overlove Coco. I wanted to cancel out the demons that conquered me before she was born. I wanted to correct mistakes that I'd made. Little did I know, in 5 years' time, Coco would inspire a decision that would once again alter the course of my life. A metaphorical love letter I'd write her would transform me into the person I was desperately trying to be. But the decision would also force me to face the demons that for now I was pushing deep down where I couldn't hear them tormenting me. Guys, thanks for listening to my first chapter. Really appreciate it. And if you'd like to keep reading, you can head over to dearcoco.com and grab a copy of the book. Thanks, guys.